I remember the most horrific night of my life when I was only just barely a fourth grader, which would have put me right around 10 years old. It was Halloween night. I was trick-or-treating with my older cousins, aunts and uncles, and some of my younger cousins as well, whom I really wasn't all that close with, to be honest. Nonetheless, I was still excited. What kid doesn't love Halloween? I remember getting enough candy to last the whole 12 months until the next Halloween most years. There was a lot going on, and the neighborhood I was in was huge. I was unfamiliar with it. My parents were out for the night while I was staying at my cousin's house until the next morning when my mom was supposed to pick me up before school. It was all fun for the first hour, but it was hard for me to fit in with the other kids. I felt like the outcast the entire time. But at least I was getting tons of candy. We were in one of the rich neighborhoods in town, and it seemed like every house would give each trick-or-treater a huge handful. Our bags filled up quickly, and it was almost time to go back to the house before we knew it. At one point, I was sidetracked by a man standing across the street. It was like he had a bird's eye view on me, just staring at our group relentlessly. Or was he staring at me? I snapped out of it when my Aunt Julie grabbed my shoulder and told me it was time to leave. I followed along and forgot about the man that I saw. "What do you want to do tonight?" I asked my cousins. "We're not doing anything with you, weirdo," Hannah replied, and then they all laughed at me. It was too bad that my aunt and uncle were too far ahead for them to hear what they said to me, because they probably would have stuck up for me. Anyways, I didn't say much after that on our walk home, and I trailed behind them slowly, and I was feeling sad. I was upset that they didn't want to hang out with me and for how they were treating me. It wasn't long before I saw that creepy man again. No costume, and he was alone. A very tall-looking and skinny, frail man. I could see him even better this time, and he was much closer. I stopped in my tracks as he approached me. He was walking fast in our general vicinity. Then he just stopped again in the middle of the road, about halfway. Even my group took note of him, and they looked behind to check on me. I think they thought it was a prank, but I thought something was wrong. For heaven's sake, the man looked real creepy. I know it was Halloween, but he just looked naturally creepy, without even wearing a costume. He didn't even need one. What's also crazy was that a car almost hit him head on and began honking and yelling at the man when he wouldn't move. That directed the man's focus on the driver, and it gave us enough time to skedaddle out of there. I thought about him all night, while everyone else lied in bed watching movies and eating popcorn and gossiping, having fun. I spent the night in the living room without a real blanket or pillow. I couldn't even find the remote to watch TV. It really was just me, myself, and I. To make everything worse, I couldn't even catch a wink of shut-eye, so the night dragged on. The howling winds continued with the chirping crickets. Eventually, I threw a temper tantrum, and I threw my face in the pillow, and I screamed as loud as I could, while simultaneously hitting the couch over and over. It felt good to treat that couch like my friends had been treating me all night. Eventually, I calmed down and I listened. I could hear everyone upstairs having fun still. I had all this pent-up anger, and it drove me nuts all night, but I knew all I could do was hang tight. I laid there for another hour trying to sleep, and eventually I got up for a second to get some water and to stretch a little bit. While I was filling up my glass with water, though, something unexpected happened. I could have sworn that I saw something out of the corner of my eye outside. I started to feel weird, but it was like it disappeared, or I was just seeing things. I went back to the couch to lie down, but I couldn't get the thought out of my mind. There was a scarecrow in the general vicinity of where I looked, so I brushed it off as just that, a Halloween decoration. As the time ticked on, right when I was about to finally doze off, I heard some tapping noise on the sliding glass door. Now I was truly freaked out, and I knew it wasn't my imagination. By the time I slowly crept to the door, I couldn't see anything. It was too dark out there. Stupidly, I opened the door and I turned the patio light on. But still, there was nothing out of the ordinary. But I waited, till I heard somebody calling for help. He was coming from right across me in the darkness. I froze for a second, but the person asking for help continued, and I was worried. I stepped outside, and as soon as I did, somebody to my right grabbed my arm and started yanking me away. He tried to cover my mouth, but I bit his finger as hard as humanly possible. I was able to scream finally, and then he hit me upside the head with his bare fist, almost knocking me out cold. I was able to keep yelling for help when I saw another person approaching us from the distance. It was the same area I heard someone yelling for help. It was a decoy. This was all set up. My heart was under attack, and I was experiencing some of the worst adrenaline. Like my heart was going to beat out of my chest, literally. It was 100% the man I saw from earlier in the night, but with an accomplice this time. They took advantage of my innocence. They were hoping I would try to help somebody in need, and sure enough, they were right. They knew I didn't know any better when I was only 10. They both tried to grab me and take me away, but luckily my uncle stepped out with a shotgun and scared them off. He took me inside and we called the police. We had a clear description of one of the men, but for the other, he was wearing a mask, so we were screwed. The police never caught either of them, unfortunately, and that was as far as it went. I'm just glad that my uncle was there. He just so happened to be getting up to get water in the middle of the night. Otherwise, I probably would have disappeared without a trace. He only heard me screaming when he came downstairs to use the restroom and grab a midnight snack. Complete coincidence. What's also crazy is I haven't seen any of my cousins or uncles since that night. My father isn't very fond of that side of the family anymore. So after that incident, I kind of took his word for everything and stayed away. Not to mention, I was almost kidnapped. That messed me up for a long time. I'm sure those men are still out there doing what they did to me to other kids. I really hope not, but hey, what can we do? It was Halloween night and I was 16 years old. I didn't want to go out since I wasn't feeling well. My friends were upset, as was I guess, but it really wasn't a big deal anyways. I usually only did stuff like Halloween to get out of the house, or just for the experience with my friends, I guess. I never really liked candy much, truthfully. All it does is give you cavities and low blood sugar. I took the opportunity to chill in my room all night and let loose, and I FaceTimed my girlfriend. I turned on some Netflix with some popcorn and then I called it a night. I was fine with that. Anytime I wasn't at school or work was a good time for me. We live in a big house in the country. It's not like the sticks, but to me it's the country. You know, it's a few minutes from downtown, but it has that country vibe to it. Dirt road, houses far apart, cornfields, farms, all that stuff. I was sitting there just relaxing when I heard a tap on my window. It scared the shit out of me until I looked outside and I saw no one there. I should have known better. It had to have been my friends pranking me. I texted the exact friend who I thought would be dumb enough to do such a thing, and I told him to leave me alone. No text back, but 5 minutes later, I heard the knock again. I looked outside, and once again, nobody there, just an empty backyard. I called my buddy this time until he finally answered, which was like 3 times. I told him to piss off and that he was actually starting to annoy me. He played dumb and clueless. To me, he was playing a game and I wasn't falling for it. After a few minutes of him sounding serious, I started to take his word for it. He even FaceTimed me to prove he was nowhere near my house. He was still trick-or-treating with our friends. That's kind of when my heart sank. To be safe, I hung up the phone and I went to my parents' room and told them what was going on. My dad and I went to check things out, and right when he thought we were in the clear, he says, "See, bud, nothing to worry about. You're just imagining things." It was crazy because no more than 5 seconds after that, we heard a loud crash from behind us in the dining room. It was the window being broken. My dad grabbed a gun and I followed behind despite him telling me not to. We looked for the intruder all over outside, but he was nowhere to be found. My dad told me to shut up, but I was freaking out inside. "Dad, Over there." I saw him run behind our shed. We walked over there slowly, and that's right where he was. This man was huge, and he had a crowbar with him. There was a few minutes of my father just screaming at this guy and ordering him to submit on his knees. But the man didn't move nor say anything. He was wearing this creepy hockey mask, which made it all the more disturbing, like Jason. Finally, he lunged at us and my dad shot at his knee, causing the man to scream in pain. He tried running away, but he was disabled. We stayed with him and watched as he took his shirt off and wrapped it around his leg to try and stop the bleeding until the cops finally showed up, which was a long and excruciating 10 minutes. The cops took the mask off the man, and we had no idea who he was at all or what he wanted. Seems like to me he was just a weirdo trying to get a good scare in on Halloween, and maybe murder us or rob us. Who knows, really? Seems like a psychopath to me. This whole thing went to court, and he was charged with a bunch of shit. I'll have to ask my dad, but I know he's serving some serious time, I would imagine. This happened last Halloween, and I have been saving this story for a whole year. My name is Janie, and this story is something crazy that happened to my friend Alex and I on Halloween night. We didn't do the normal trick-or-treating stuff. We just walked around the city and pre-gamed at a couple of bars, a few hours before everyone started to come out. We also checked out some neighborhoods and just gossiped while enjoying the night. We of course dressed up. I was a cat, and Alex dressed as a mermaid witch thing. Her words, not mine, by the way. In general, we had tons of fun, until some guy wouldn't leave me alone. We bumped into each other by accident, and of course, afterwards he wanted to stay and chat. The traditional guy move. He was a Chad, and I was absolutely not interested, but still, he wouldn't leave me alone. We finally shook him off after maybe 10 minutes of him ranting to us, despite me telling him to leave us alone at least 5 times. He ruined the vibe for me a little bit, but we eventually got back to ourselves, and we had a great idea. We came to a dead end in the neighborhood we were at, and behind it looked like a trail that led straight to the woods. We both looked at each other and smiled, almost like we read each other's minds. We walked through the trail for maybe 10 minutes until we came across an abandoned camp or hangout spot. There was a makeshift hammock, a picnic table, a fire pit, some lawn chairs, and empty beer bottles all over. I grabbed my own bottle out of my purse so we could both have a few shots, and Alex had a joint we could smoke. I remembered that I had a Bluetooth speaker in my purse as well, so I took that out and we took turns playing our favorite songs, continuing to talk about random stuff. We were having a great time, but the time wore on, and after realizing we had spent over an hour out there, we decided it was time to go. It was getting late, and Halloween was probably almost over. Maybe 30 minutes left before 90% of the trick-or-treaters would be done. We took that time to sober up a little bit and get our heads on straight before I had to drive us home safely. We parked at a local CVS, and we managed to walk a lot further away from our car than we thought. Suddenly, it was cold and windy, and we wished for the heat in the car. We didn't talk as much as the alcohol was slowly wearing off, and we were just freezing at this point, and really just ready to be home after a long day and night. We finally made it to the parking lot when I stopped my place. That dude from earlier, Alex, look. Oh my god, you've got to be kidding me. That guy from earlier that wouldn't leave us alone. He was just sitting on the hood of my car, staring at us. We yelled at him to get off the car, and then we threatened to call the police if he didn't leave. I had no idea how he even knew which car was mine. That was the weirdest part. My dad is a cop though, and I told the creep that he would be here in minutes to arrest him if he didn't go, like right now. He was acting really weird and seemed unfazed by the threats. He didn't believe my dad was a cop for whatever reason. A true sociopath. He was being very demeaning and absolutely creepy with avoiding our demands for personal space. I completely had it with this dude, so I called my dad and he showed up within like 5 minutes with a good cop friend of his. In the meantime, while we waited for my dad, the creeper was throwing a fit the whole 5 minutes. He kept calling me Kylie for some reason. He was convinced he knew me from school and that I tried giving him a fake name, which isn't true. He must have been on drugs. He started ominously threatening me, saying things like, "You're going to regret this one day," and just really weird stuff like that makes me feel sick to even think about right now. He even made some creepy sexual advances that he probably still gets off to this day. He really got a smack in the face though when my dad showed up. He was arrested for trying to evade police, harassing me and my friend, public intoxication, trying to bribe an officer, and even possession of marijuana and some dumb pills. Dude was a total tard and he got what he had coming to him.